Apriorian is a composite of a priori, meaning deductive. Apriorian or deductive reasoning assumes there is a truth available to man that is intrinsic to him and the universe. Apriorian believes the universe and truth are of the same substance. Because we believe the universe was created by an infinite intelligence, we believe, of necessity, it was created as truth, from truth, because if it was not truth, it could not persist. Lies do not cohere. God as the creator of truth is the embodiment of truth. God is the highest and most perfect conception possible to imagine. If you can think of something higher and more perfect than what you think God is, then that more perfect conception is God. Perfect justice and perfect truth is God. God created the universe as information, which he encoded into symbols and transmitted this information to man as the truth in his heart. He gave man the means to decode the information and the means to transmit his understanding to others of his kind. Man is the only species with the ability to deduce the truth. All lower forms are inductive. Apriorians are the only life form capable of deductive thought. All lower forms engage in inductive reasoning. Only Apriorians have access to the truth in their hearts and are able to communicate it and reason from it. The truth is there is two species with two quite distinct realities. There are two realities, not one and not more than two, tied to the two ways of seeing things. One race and reality is inductive. Those who think inductively are liberals and they engage in social justice activities because of their inductive way of reasoning. Social justice robs Peter to pay Paul. Liberals look at all the evils in this world and imagine a world without them. This is the utopia they aspire to. But because induction tells them everything is material, the only avenue of change open to them is warfare. The war of occupation involves intimidation, oppression, coercion, and aggressive tactics short of indiscriminate slaughter. For the liberal, the path from inequality to equality is one of war, overt or covert. People have to be impressed upon to give up their excess property, because the difference between a just world and unjust one is inequality in the allocation of material goods. These where the idea of social justice comes from. The liberal looks at groups and their state and determines if this group is equal to other groups in its allotment of material goods. If they have too much, then some is taken, if too little, some is given. But in the end, the judgment of who has what and to whom more is owed belongs to the chief administrator of the state. The state is a social justice institution charged with meting out social justice. It has no other function because it lacks the capacity to be anything other than a social justice institution. The state can do absolutely nothing than rob Peter to pay Paul in response to an envisioned idyllic state of equality. There is nothing the state does that is not done with other people's creative work. But this is okay because for liberals there is only one reality, and we are all heirs to it and we all have an equal right to it. No one has greater rights than the other. Yet, there is nothing in the physical world that corresponds to a right. Rights are a product of war or the capacity to wage war. Without martial success, rights could not be entertained. But there is more. Induction leads naturally to globalism. Social justice is the mechanism used by liberals to push the world towards a single, global state. Democracy is the other tool used by globalists to move forward their agenda. This objective need not be conscious, it is inherent in the way they think and understand reality. To have social justice and implement its agenda fully requires a single global government. But to have social justice at any level requires centralized government. The ideal worldview has to be the property of only a few persons or even just one autocrat. The state has to have the power to determine a state of inequality exists and implement a process of redistribution to effect a state of equality. Democracy not only concentrates into a few hands, it explicitly gives the state power of attorney over the voter, the subject. The subject does not just vote for a representative, he or she votes away his or her individual rights and receives class rights or legal rights. One becomes a member of the state with the benefits and duties of a subject. As a subject of the state, we become subject to the social justice agenda established by the state. By the very nature of the inductive process, the natural frame of reference is all persons, both as a starting point and as the ending point. If we wish to create equality, we need to work globally, not regionally. Therefore, the activities of many states, particularly Western states, have a global flavor and do not make sense when considered from the position of a nationalist. But what gives globalists this right to sacrifice the nation on the altar of globalist aspirations? But this is almost a nonsensical question for a social justice warrior. The fact they can and do it, gives them the right. It is termed the globalist principle of power. Might makes right, and the end justifies the means. Globalists have no idea what is right or true until they test it in the laboratory of Earth. If they can do it, then they were justified in what they did. One has to be able to block them if one wishes to demonstrate what they are doing is wrong. Failure is wrong, to a liberal. And so, the only way to defeat a conquering army is through war. And since the social justice agenda is an act of war, this war has been going on since the dawn of human history. The right has the option of capitulating, negotiating a surrender, or fighting. We either become elements of the social justice of the liberal state, or we prove to the social justice warriors that their agenda is not applicable to us. We will not be colonized by them. The first thing that has to be freed is our minds of their lies and brainwashing. Mankind does not have a right to be equal. We do not owe anyone anything. We were not born with a racial or national debt. What we create belongs to us who created it. Herein lays the greatest lie of the liberal colonizer. Social justice requires the colonizer have a claim to everything that exists. Now, liberals may argue we are all in this world and we all have an equal right to it, but what does this mean? No one created the earth or any of the natural elements of the universe. So we as individuals may have no claim on any of it, but that does not justify the state from claiming title to the jurisdiction, nor does their army and guns validate any of the claims they make. No one owns any part of natural creation but the Creator God. Let's assume we have an equal right to the use of the earth. This still only gives us personal use rights. We can own an equal amount for personal use, but we do not have any right to claim large swaths of nature for commercial or imperial usage. We are not to be colonized, not by state or private interests. There is then the colonizer and the colonized. The colonizer takes over the local economy by means of democracy and then a social justice agenda. To counter colonization, create a loconomy. This is a local economy that is owned by locals. Loconomics create a local currency based on the issue of preferred shares, prefers, backed by the equity created by the loconomy. Loconomics are sustainable and resilient. Loconomics eliminates the need of democracy and prevents social justice agendas from hacking local initiatives. Because Apriorians reject the right of anyone to claim what they did not create, Apriorians reject the right of anyone to own assets, though personal use rights are permitted. What people own is the value added. We own the fruits of our labor. There is nothing much that is natural, that is suitable for human use without some form of work being added to it. The one who does the work owns the value of the work, but not the substrate worked on. The residents of a locality are the tacit trustees of the resources they need for their survival. But they cannot own these resources or this area as private or public bodies. But they own it as a use right. So, a boundary is created enclosing a jurisdiction. This jurisdiction is their territory. This territory is for the usage of the citizens of that jurisdiction and no other. To reverse the social justice agenda of liberals, commercial and public property is transferred to a property trust or loconomic trust. The trust is composed of the individual accounts of the members. Property given in trust is compensated for with a deposit of prefers into the benefactor's account. There is no longer the ability for any group to promote a social justice agenda. All payments to the accounts of locavores are because of value created by work done to assets. Imagine your community as it is today with public and private agencies all striving for power and position. The public agencies are struggling to obtain funds from the private sector, and they use various means and social justice arguments. When they get funds, they distribute the money according to their vision of an ideal future. Perhaps they attempt to correct a perceived historical injustice. To do this, they take money from those who are actually producing real benefits to the community. Perhaps the public sector wants to make the community work better, so they obtain money to build roads, schools, sewers, and other public works. But even here, they take money from the productive sector to give to other parts of the economy to pay them for the work the government wants done. The government does not dig a hole, lay a brick, nor even spend an hour teaching. They simply devise arguments for why a public good needs to be delivered and how the funds will be collected and distributed. Things the private sector already does. But there is a claim that the private sector cannot produce social goods. There is a qualification to be added to this statement. It is true for capitalism, but it is not intrinsically impossible for people not in public service to ensure public goods are produced. A public good is generally a product that people can use freely without individual payments being made. But if a capitalist cannot charge a per-use fee, there is no incentive for private enterprise to make the infrastructure. But it is still the same private individuals who do the work regardless of if the project is privately or publicly funded. The mission of locavores is the removal of social justice from the community in which they reside. If social justice is globalist, then loconomics is localist. We have to get the power to access what belongs to us out of the hands of the state and all the other social justice warriors.